In System Location, we have multiple Funtime variants of the Fazbear game, all except for Funtime Chica, and we learned from a teaser source code that the reason for this was because she was being rented by a place called Chica's Potty World. And for years, we never hear of this again until Secret of the Mimic, where it's revealed that Chica's Potty World was also a client of Murray's Costume Manor, and I believe that this reference and something else hidden in the game might have solved where exactly System Location takes place on the timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's. But first, let's go over what we know of System Location's placement prior to Secret of the Mimic. We learned early on in System Location that this game takes place after the closing of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set.
But this already causes problems because the location could be one out of three: the missing children's incident location, the Fnaf 2 restaurant, and the Fnaf 1 restaurant. However, even this gave us somewhat of an exact date. If it opened after a Freddy's Pizzeria closed and there's three, the earliest it could possibly be is sometime during or after the year 1985. Why specifically 1985? Well, the events of the novel trilogy happen in 85, and Into the Abyss children's incident happens in 85. So it's kinda safe to say that the Mainline children's incident happens in 1985, and Freddy's closes shortly after this event. Now, aside from that, there's really only one more thing suggesting System Location's timeline: a theory, the Molten MCI theory. In the novels The Fourth Closet, it's revealed that William Afton gathered the missing children, melted them together, and created Remnant, in which he then put inside the Funtime animatronics. While this did not exactly happen in the games, the clues are indeed there that suggest something similar happened. First, in Pizzeria Simulator, Candy Cadet repeatedly gives us stories about 5 things being stitched together.
The woman melted the 5 keys together in the furnace to create a single key, hoping it would unlock all 5 doors.
This is what happens in the novels. In Help Wanted, the vet level where we fight Ennard, a furnace can be seen where we see models of animatronics, 4 animatronics, seemingly being melted together. This happens in the novels. And then, also in Pizzeria Simulator, we have Henry's lines that say this:
as if what he had already done wasn't enough. He found a new way to desecrate, to humiliate, to destroy. He lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks. He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there again. He overpowered them again, and he robbed them of the only thing that they had again.
This also happens in the novels. Now, the most common interpretation of this theory is that during FNAF 3's Follow Me, he lured the animatronics with old tricks to then take them to the System Location bunker, melt them down, and eject them into the Fun Times, where they eventually become Ennard and then Molten Freddy, hence the name Molten MCI. The evidence is all there, but what does this have to do for the timeline of System Location? Well, Follow Me happens in the FNAF 1 restaurant, and we can see the building is leaking water, there's debris everywhere, and even parts of the floor is missing. This building has obviously been abandoned, which happens in the novels, which means Follow Me happens after FNAF 1, which is when William starts getting the animatronics to be melted together and create Remnant, which means System Location happens after FNAF 1. So why the f am I making this video? Well, because I believe that this is wrong. System Location does not happen after FNAF 1. It happens before it, and Chica's Potty Road solves it. But before I tell you how Chica's Potty Road exactly supports this, along with the hidden detail in Secret of the Mimic, there's one more thing to the Molten MCI theory that's very important. You see, there's a reason why Molten MCI is still being debated despite having tons of evidence. The reason is one small thing: the Survival Logbook. The Survival Logbook is a log for Freddy's Pizzeria and is owned by Michael. So we've used this book for clues to the lore for the game, even confirming some things like how Michael was the protagonist in FNAF 4 and the name of the crying child. Actually, that's still kind of being debated right now. And the name of the child who possesses Golden Freddy. Also in it, we get even more confirmation that Michael was the protagonist in System Location, as he draws casual bongos, one of the music options Haynuda gives us in the game, and the exotic butters, which is given to us after we beat the game. But wait a minute, if Molten MCI happens after Follow Me, then what Freddy's location does the book take place in? But what if it wasn't a Freddy's location? It was Fazbear Frights, is what I would say if it wasn't debunked by 2 things. First, on page 30, Michael says this: everything about this place is crazy and nobody seems to notice but me. This wouldn't make sense for something Michael would say if this was for FNAF 3. At this point, he went through System Location and at least FNAF 1. He would already know how crazy things can be. And then on page 52, we get a whole section talking about about Springlock suits, but we can see a sticky note where somebody asks the owner to disregard this page and to keep quiet about the Springlocks. This also wouldn't make sense for a higher up at Fazbear Frights to say, as for one, it's not even confirmed if this place is actually owned by Fazbear Entertainment, and two, Phone Dude literally gives us the tapes of Fun Guy explaining the Springlock suits in great detail, completely contradicting what the sticky note says. So it can't be for FNAF 3, it has to be before. The earliest it can be is for FNAF 1 or FNAF 2, which would mean system location has to happen before FNAF 1 either way, but certain arguments were still raised. On pages 26, 48, 68, and 90, something is in the background that shouldn't be possible, the Fazbear Frights location. We already said that the logbook could be for Fazbear Frights because of the sticky notes, and it has to be for a pizzeria, but Fazbear Frights didn't happen until way after even FNAF 1, so what's going on? Well, because of this, lots of people are now starting to agree that the logbook isn't in the same continuity as the games, because of how much it contradicts mainly with the FNAF 3 references, which would get rid of the evidence saying system location happens before FNAF 1. Remember that one hidden detail I mentioned in the intro? There is something in Secret of the Mimic that solves why the logbook is so contradictory to itself. And spoiler, it's not. What is that detail? Well, near the end of the game, we make our way to a prototype version of the FNAF 1 restaurant, even complete with prototype versions of the Fazbear game. If you want to learn more about this, you can watch my last video, but if we make our way to the middle of the restaurant, we can see a monitor of some sorts that shows the floor map of Fazbear Frights. If there's already a prototype for the FNAF 1 restaurant and there's already a map for the FNAF 3 location, what's to say Fazbear Entertainment doesn't have a FNAF 3 prototype location somewhere out there? Maybe it was supposed to be another restaurant, and they used pictures of that restaurant as references to illustrate the survival logbook, meaning the evidence in the book that says system location happens before FNAF 1 can still be true. So the survival logbook says system location happens before FNAF 1, but which restaurant exactly? The FNAF 2 restaurant or the FNAF 1 restaurant? If I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really here to solve when the logbook takes place. While yes, it can give us a more set date on when system location happens, I feel it wouldn't even matter for what's coming next up in the video. However, even if the logbook places system location before FNAF 1, Molten MCI still says otherwise. Molten MCI works on the idea that the original 4 animatronics were melted together and put inside the Funtime animatronics, which can't work if system location is before FNAF 1, as they would need to be unmelted and still put together. But can it really not work? Let's look closely at the theory. In system location, we get introduced to the scooper, and in Pizzeria Simulator, it's revealed that the scooper is actually a Remnant injector, so putting 2 and 2 together, it seems like the Funtimes were injected with Remnant from the original 4, giving them their aggressive nature. But it's important to know how Remnant exactly works. In the novels, the main 4 are melted together, like I've already mentioned, and they are currently getting Remnant extracted from them and put inside the Funtimes. But look at how the Funtimes can be affected by it with the main 4 not being fully inside them. This suggests that the main 4 can coexist with the Remnant being somewhere else. Well, what if that is the case in the games? It's entirely possible that sometime during the original animatronics lifespan, they had some Remnant taken from them and then it got put inside the Funtimes. For example, when the withered animatronics were being rebuilt to the FNAF 1 animatronics, what if William Afton took some parts of them and then took them to create Remnant, and which he then put into the Funtime animatronics? We even see that they can have the Remnant somewhere and they can still be active someplace else. In the very same Follow Me minigame, the 5 kids apparate and sort of kill William Afton. However, by this time, whether system location is after FNAF 1 or not, the Funtimes have to be created because, you know, William created them and he can't exactly be there to make them if he's dead. But even if this is true, that leaves multiple holes. We kind of literally see the entire endos being melted together in Help Wanted, and Candy Cadet does not exactly say it's parts of something being stitched together. He's talking about the entire thing. The animatronics have to be melted together. There's too many hits for it, and the only way it can work is if system location happens after FNAF 1. Because if they were melted together before FNAF 1, they wouldn't exactly be there to entertain the kids at the pizzeria. So what the hell was going on? The logbook suggests it's before FNAF 1, but that's just not possible. I'm going to be honest, I'm kinda stuck here. I've been trying for a few days to think of a way that can make this work, but I can't think of anything, except I started to look deeper. All of Candy Cadet's stories revolve around stitching 5 of something together, obviously referring to how the animatronics of the MCI were melted together, except for Golden Freddy. You see, in the novels, Golden Freddy was never actually melted with the rest of the 4 missing children, and while he is in the amalgamation, he's basically there of his own free will. Whenever William uses Remnant on the Funtimes, the 4 children let go a portion of themselves themselves, but Golden Freddy's spirit is in the amalgamation trying to get the 4 others back together. His own soul is still intact. William never actually melted, or in this case stitched, all 5 of the animatronics together. He only did it to 4. But okay, maybe in the games, instead of 4, it was all 5. However, back in Help Wanted, Ender's Furnace only shows 4 endos instead of 5. So this got me thinking, maybe I should look even closer at Candy Cadet, and I might have found something. In one story, he goes on about how a man stitched 5 children together to fit in a coffin because he could only afford 1. However, stitching bodies together doesn't exactly make more room, unless he has a bigger coffin, but that coffin would probably cost the same as 5 smaller coffins. But he somehow did make them smaller and able to fit in the coffin. Well, what if he didn't exactly stitch the entire bodies together, but instead only parts? And that would make it fit inside of 1 coffin. And what if this translates over to the games? William Afton took parts of the original animatronics and melted them together to make a Remnant. But then what about Help Wanted? The furnace room has 4 full endos being melted, not just pieces of 4 endos. Well, it's important to note that the level that this furnace takes place in likely isn't even real. What if this furnace is likely just a representation for the melted 4, but not the real thing? It's just there to point us in the right direction. Hell, we even got an entire DLC that's basically just a representation of something, or whatever. I don't really know what's going on with the Dreadbird DLC. It's low-key kind of weird. This would sort of fit in with the inconsistency of Candy Cadet's stories. His stories were meant to tell us that parts of the kids were being melted, and the furnace was meant to tell us that it was only 4 of the kids being melted together and not 5. And so, if this is true, this would finally fix the Molten MCI theory to work with system location pre-Fnaf 1. Instead of taking the entirety of the 4 animatronics, he took parts out of them and melted them together down in the system location bunker to put inside the fun times. The Help Wanted evidence was there to tell us it was only 4 of the children, and the Candy Cadet stories were there to tell us that parts of the kids were melted together, not their entire bodies. Before I go on, I would like to say something. In my past 2 videos, I said that if I reach 1 million subscribers, I will find my way into a call with Scott Cawthon and convince him to make an IRL mega pizza place, which probably has multiple reasons why it can't exist, but hey, at least I tried. I also said that if I reach 1,000 followers on my Twitch, I will be doing a Fnaf merch giveaway to 5 people. So make sure to subscribe, follow the Twitch, and join the Discord below for more info. And now, let's get back into it. So, that's it? I finessed the logbook to work within the game's timeline, which says system location happens before Fnaf 1, and I got the Molten MCI theory to work with this, with maybe a little bit of stretching that I will explain at the end of the video, but there's still something left. In the intro, I explained how I believe the Chica's Party Road references in Secret of the Mimic solves when system location takes place, and I believe that this puts the final nail in the coffin of its placement. So let me explain our first encounter with the location first. In one of the teasers leading up to system location, multiple abbreviated words can be found, some of which included After Robotics, Children Entertainment, Criminal Institute, and the one that we are all here for, Chica's Party Road. Now at first we didn't really know what to make of this, but when the game actually released, we put 2 and 2 together. You see, in this game we have variations of Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, and if you stretch it just enough, we technically have a variation of the puppet. But one vital figure is missing, Chica, a funtime Chica. However, it's important to know the context of these characters. They were made to be rented out to clients, aka Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. And looking at the exact coding for Chica's Party Road, it basically says that Chica's Party Road is a client. A client of what? Of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. We figured that Funtime Chica was just being rented by Chica's Party Road, which is why she's absent in the underground bunker. We did go through a period where we thought that the suit that we are trapped in Night 4 was Funtime Chica, but it just doesn't match the design we have of her now, and it was kinda just baseless as well. Anyway, we learned from this that a place called Chica's Party Road exists and is renting out our Funtime Chica. And then we never hear of this again, until now, in Secret of the Mimic, where it's revealed it's crashing. But that's the thing. I think this gives us a hint to system location's timeline. You see, since it's crashing, it's unlikely that they are going to run out of business soon. But as we know, they are still around about the time of system location as they are renting out Funtime Chica. So let's look at it this way. While businesses can crash, they can manage to stay in business for a while, although not for too long. So what we need to do is theorize a time when Chica's Party Road rents out Funtime Chica that fits with how long that they can stay in business. And so, honestly, it's looking like Funtime Chica's rental is straight after the missing children's incident. Hear me out. The average time a business stays in business after a spike in the crash is 2 to 5 years. And let's look at the dates we have. Secret of the Mimic takes place in 1979, which means the crash happens in 79. So if you go to the highest number in the average, that makes it 1984. However, 5 is just an average estimation. There are times where businesses can stay in business after a crash for 6 and even 10 years. And if so, that could make Funtime Chica's rental and ultimately system location happen in 1985, the year that the missing children's incident happened. This, believe it or not, fits in with with every piece of evidence regarding the system location's timeline. First, we know that the MCI caused Freddys Pizzeria to close down, which is what happens early on in system location. This would leave 2 other restaurants for the Logbook's timeline to happen, and this could work with Molten MCI. In Fnaf 2, which happened shortly after the MCI restaurant closes down, the withered animatronics are missing parts, and while yes, those parts could just be in the toys, it's not much of a stretch to say William Afton took some of those parts and put them in the fun times. It doesn't have to be a lot either. The novels show William injecting a small vial of Remnant into a much bigger animatronic. We know that the spirits can basically be at 2 places at once, as no matter what you believe about system location timeline in the final Follow Me minigame, the spirits operate to haunt William. While we know that at this point the fun times have to have Remnant already, as you know William dies like 5 seconds after this, and if he's not there, nobody's there to make Remnant. But how exactly did William even know about Remnant? Well, around this time, he would have seen the puppet being possessed, and then the original 4, leading him to the discovery of Remnant. But what about Michael? A lot of people are starting to not like the idea that he went through all of the games with his insides being scooped out and him being purple. But it doesn't have to be like that. It's revealed in the logbook that he likes to chew gum, which he can only do if he has teeth, aka his skeleton, aka his insides. And we know that at this point, he has been scooped, so it's safe to say that not all of its insides were scooped out. But what about the color? Well, we know that the scooper actually injects Remnant, so Michael is running around with Remnant inside of him, and Remnant works in mysterious ways. And there are theories that Remnant can regenerate body parts. So what if the Remnant inside of him is healing his purpleness and turning him not purple? But oh my god, what about Ennard? Is he just running around for 50 or more or less years in the sewers? Yes, actually. He would be in the sewers for at least 30 years anyways until Pizzeria Simulator, so a couple more years wouldn't hurt. And so there you have it. There's a little more evidence, however, like how in Help Wanted, both Funtime Freddy and Circus Baby animatronics from System Location are in FNAF 4 levels, which would be early on in the timeline. And Into the Pit, which is in 1985, we can find a security office where lo and behold, we can see some meat arenas, which come from System Location. But with all of that, we can more or less say that Secret of the Mimic just finally solved when System Location takes place. After the missing children's incident, Freddys Pizzeria closed, causing William to make Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, in which he rents out animatronics to businesses like Chica's Party Road, which is crashing. During this time, he takes parts from the original animatronics, melted them together, and created Remnant, in which he put into the fun times. And then we know the rest of the story. Michael gets scooped, Ennard gets inside him, then retreats into the sewers, then the FNAF 2 restaurant opens, closes, then FNAF 1, blah blah blah. That's all the time I have for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.